Thank you. Thanks for showing up today, everyone. Happy Hanukkah. We are welcoming in the new Hebrew month of Tevet soon, a month in our calendar that is known as a chaotic month, a dark month, a very difficult one. And there is an inherent challenge to this month. There's also a lot of darkness. In the Talmud, this time is referred to as Tekufas Tevet, which refers to the winter solstice season, the short days and long cold nights. And Tevet's really a month of battling with our visceral sensations of the body, being really close to the body realm, the earthly realm. And ultimately, it's about uplifting the wisdom of the body. And that's why Kabbalah says this month is referred to as a time when the body enjoys the body. So eventually we can get to this place of deriving pleasure and wisdom from the body realm. In a deeply embodied month that we're in, it's often very triggering and from such a dark place. Yet we lit the first Hanukkah candle last night, a single flame that emerges out of a dark season. And this is what I want to focus on for our meditation, that flame that illuminates a very dark place, our guide in a place of confusion. And here we have a beautiful text. I'm sharing my screen, but for those of you who just want to listen, that's also okay. And this text describes our first experience of light in the earthly world. And this text brings us the first time we experienced candlelight from our mother's womb, from the darkest place is when a candle glowed. And with so much confusion and darkness, especially in our world right now, this text reminds us to trust again in our intuition, in our primordial self, our deep body wisdom. So let's take a look at this sacred text from a midrash, and it brings a new light for me of what it means this season of Tevet. So it's in the orange box, or you can just listen. The Holy One sends the soul off, and the angels bring it to the womb. 2 angels feed it and care for it. And this is the line we want to focus on. A candle burns over its head. By the light of the candle, they teach the embryo Torah. After 9 months, the angels say, when the time comes to leave, you will not want to go, and the child enters the world of the air. So I'll stop reading there, but I want to highlight a few important things for our meditation that this text reveals. Everything we learn throughout life, we're just rediscovering what we already know. The angels taught it to us, and the candles remind us of this inherent knowing. Whether you have a womb or not, and many of us in this room don't, the text highlights the primordial wisdom center of our low belly. Some call it the belly brain. In yoga, it's known as the hara. In Kabbalah, it's called the point of Zion. And with so much confusion and darkness in the world, we can go deep down here into the recesses of our body and really trust in our intuition and rediscover our inner light that's here. Being low in the belly brain was our very first connection to our spirit guides, our protective angels. So in a way, every insight that emerges throughout our life comes from this place because the angels taught it to us here. And the angels know all of our wisdom for our entire life. Why? Because they taught it to us. And sometimes we forget. And we can just go back to the center. It's a returning to this remembering of what we know, essentially, who we are and what our deep wisdom is. If we're confused or stuck in this dark time, we can always, of course, ask the divine, the Holy One, but we can also ask our angels. We can also come down to this center, the low belly center, and receive guidance from the place deep in our body, because our body has the wisdom, has the answers. And this flame also represents the light of awareness, the revelation. And Hanukkah, in this in this moment in history really represents that resilience in the dark time. So even in the darkest place of the womb, we see here, the candle illuminates our awareness. So let's move into our meditation. I will stop sharing my screen. And find a comfortable place. You can keep seated on your chair. You can go ahead and lay down, or any way that really brings you feeling of comfort and relaxation, as if you're cozying up by a candlelight or a warm bonfire. Let your body relax in the glow of the flame. Calmly settle in your chair or seat. Let your awareness arrive into your body, away from the distractions of the world. And we'll bring our palms to our low belly, right under the belly button, almost like you're holding a baby in your palms very gently. And let your breaths go lower and lower, drawing your awareness deep into your low belly, this belly brain, your gut, your intuition. And see if you can deepen your breaths so they fill up in the palms with the warm breath on the inhale, and on the exhale, let the belly fall back towards the spine. Just breathing deep and low. Sometimes we breathe up in our chest, but keep reminding your breaths to fill up the low belly, receiving the air in your palms. You'd like to spend the entire meditation just breathing low and deep, listening to the sounds of your breath. Just follow your own breath, and you can ignore my voice. Trusting in your body's wisdom. If you'd like to incorporate the visualization, we'll imagine a glow in the belly brain, a candle or breaths of light illuminating this dark place. And every breath helps you return, trusting in this light, in your primordial wisdom. your mind gets distracted at all, just come back to your breath, sending your awareness deep into the low belly, visualizing this warm glow of light under your navel. And we remember deep down here in this body realm was our first encounter with our spirit guides, our angels, who taught us all that we'll know through life. Was our first experience with light. So feeling the radiant glow and discovering this area. And slowly we'll notice our breaths begin to expand as our inhales and exhales get deeper and more lengthened. We may even lengthen our spine to allow for these deeper, fuller breaths. And perhaps the single flame in the womb or the low belly begins to also expand and illuminate this whole area, this realm of our deep knowingness. Every breath, trusting in our intuition. Approaching this month of Tevet, there may be times of chaos and difficulty and confusion. And if we can descend from below the collarbones into the deep recesses of the body and return to our wisdom center, the place of our deep knowingness, we can let this be a guide, a flame in the darkness that can lead us forward with clarity, with guidance from our angels and our spirits. So practicing now these deep belly breaths, the continuous returning down to the low belly. This is the practice field for when it really feels tough in the month ahead. If you've lost your focus, just continue coming back to the navel center, imagining this flickering flame beneath the belly button, the place that connected you to your mother, to the womb state, where we learned with candlelight, with the globe above our heads, learning all the Torah and all the secrets of the world. And this first light that we experience is known as the Or Haganuz, the hidden, metaphysical, spiritual light of creation. And this is the light that we celebrate on Hanukkah. This is the light that we see in the flickering flames. And with this light, it says that Adam could see from one end of the world to the other, because connecting here is connecting to that connected consciousness of all beings, the big picture, the revelation. So we'll take our last few minutes in silence, connecting to that light within. We'll take your last round of deep, brightening, warming breaths. And if your hands are still placed on your low belly, let's gently lift them up as if we're lifting up the light to our heart center, placing the palms on our heart, dipping your chin towards your heart, and saying any last prayer or intention that you have for this new upcoming month of Tevet. And the root word of Tevet is Tov, which means good. So may this unique light come forth from our hearts and from our low belly, from our deep body centers, and bring out our unique light of goodness. You can gently open your eyes. And Chodesh Tov, everyone. I hope that your intentions really bring a lot of light forward through this really dark time.
Thank you so much, Jenna. Just beautiful. Friends, I want to note that today's sit, our practice today, is sponsored by Joan Sudman Shapiro in memory of her loving and devoted mother, Grace Lillian Sudman, of blessed memory, on the occasion of her 30th yahrzeit. And as we prepare to seal our practice by enabling those who are observing yahrzeits or in mourning to recite the mourner's Kaddish, I want to thank Joan for sponsoring today in memory of her mom, Grace. And Joan writes about her that she exemplified a kind heart and refraining from lashon hara, from damaging, unwholesome speech, qualities I am still striving to emulate. So Zichrona Livracha, may your mom's memory be a blessing for you always, Joan. Thank you so much for sponsoring our practice. And for each of us for who are reciting Kaddish today, for holding up the light of those we were remembering. You can put their name or names in the chat now or after we recite Kaddish. Thanks to Jordan for sharing the words on the screen. And if you're not reciting Kaddish, again, as always, you're invited to stay present for those who are and offer your support. And if you're reciting Kaddish, please join me by rising in body or in spirit, and you can unmute at this time. Yikadal, Vikadash, Shemerabah, Yalmad, Yivrach, Yiruteh, Yamich, Malchuteh, V'chayeh, Yomech, V'chol Beit Yisrael, Ha'agala, V'zman B'brit, Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba V'varach L'Aleinu Barach V'Shach V'Tahar V'Yitzcham V'Yitnaseh V'Yitgadar V'Yitaleh V'Yithalal Shmei V'Kudsha Kol Birchata V'Shivcha V'Chata V'Nechamata Ba'amran Ba'alma V'Yirun Amen. Yesh Lama Rabba Mishamaya
Hey Shlama Rabba Mishamaya, V'hayu Melim V'Yokol Yisrael.
Amen.
Amen.
Shalom
V'Rama
V'Rama
V'Shalom.
Shalom.
Aleinu V'Yokol Yisrael.
Israel.
El Kol Yoshvei Tevel.
Tevel.
Imru. Amen.
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 Friends, thanks so much for joining us today. I want to thank, once again, Joan Sudman Shapiro for sponsoring our practice in loving memory of her mom, Grace, on the occasion of her 30th yahrzeit. Thanks to Jordan Pollock for holding our text space, as always, beautifully. And especially thanks to Jenna Zadaka from the At the Well Project for guiding us in such a beautiful practice today on the first day of Hanukkah in anticipation of the arrival of the month of Tevet next Tuesday night, and really to help us sit into Shabbat together in such a wonderful way. So thank you so much, Jenna. As always, you're invited to stay on, either to continue to sit with that candle in your lower belly and to breathe, or to join us for some conversation. If you want to present, offer a question to Jenna, I'll keep an eye out for that. And you can just preface it in the chat by writing question in all caps, and I'll keep an eye out for that. And if you have just would like to share reflection on the teaching or the practice today, feel free to do that as well. Okay, Jenna, let me bring you back in. Here we go. Hi. Thank you so much. That was great. And a lot of people, I think, I don't know about a lot of people. Some people may know about that tradition about, the angel touching the upper lip before the birth, and then forgetting, like learning the whole Torah in the womb and then forgetting it. But that the origin of it in that midrash and the idea of learning Torah by the candle, I love that, and it's so perfect for today. Thank you for that.
Thank you. And I think that's why it's so mystical to learn by candlelight, because we're going back to that original place.
So one of the things, oops, hold on. Here we go. Okay. Oops, I muted you, so you need to unmute, Jenna. For those who may struggle to understand that story or that midrash metaphorically, who might be in a literalist place and say, I don't know about the angels, and what are you talking about in the candle? In terms of understanding like what that teaching is representing, it seems to me that it's representing this idea that we are imbued with this innate wisdom, right? That is present but hidden from us once we're born, once we're out in the world, which is analogous to what you were describing, that Or Haganuz, the hidden light. And so I wanted to invite you, since I know you do a lot of teaching about somatic and embodied practice, to talk a little bit about the wisdom of the body, the Torah of the body, and maybe you can just speak for yourself about like how you came to that, what that means for you, and how we might recover that wisdom that's innate by paying closer attention to what's going on in the body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, firstly, I think it's bringing awareness from the mind under the collarbones. And for me, I think of it as descending through the throat channel, arriving in the heart, and then bringing awareness even deeper than from the bridge of the heart into my womb, or if you don't have a womb, the belly brain, the hara. And I think the first time I ever viscerally experienced in like embodied Torah insight is the line that I shared today, that Adam saw with this light from one end of the world to the other. It sounds sweet and beautiful, but I was going through a lot of grief last year, and I, for the first time in my life, came to a place in my heart where I could connect to someone across the entire world by connecting to my heart's grief and also my heart's light that was beneath the grief. Mm-hmm. I understood this teaching as you can pray for someone or be with someone's light across the world, or even across lifetimes if they've passed. And this is what it means to me, that he saw from one end of the world to the other. And I think we all have the power to enter deeply into our hearts. Sometimes it's by tragedy, unfortunately, when we're really like pushed into dark times, and other times it can come through intentional, mindful, and embodied practice. Hopefully it's the latter for everyone. That is really beautiful. And I think it's interesting, like when we before we begin, as you know, because you were on, we preface the sit with an opportunity for people to pray for people who are ill, including themselves. And we've been, of course, also calling to mind the hostages, and really directing attention in the same way that you're describing, of feeling, of recognizing, at least for me, I'll say, having a palpable sense of connection, of real connection in the way you're describing, which is just so powerful. There's a question here. Oops, wait. I'd like to add while you're looking, one more thing. Yeah. is to enter our deep belly wisdom is through silence. And there's a beautiful quote in Pirkei Avot that says there's nothing better for the body than silence. And I think that means we spend a lot of time in our mind, and we have to empty out the trash in our mind. And that could be a lot of our mindfulness practice is emptying out the trash. But eventually we can kind of clear that mind and see what is arising and what is alive in the body. And for everyone, they may feel that in different places. If you are feeling something in your heart, that silence will allow you to explore that. If you're feeling something deeper, like in your sit bones or in like your lower energy centers, then that space will give you a chance to uncover it. And I think that that's what's so important about what you are creating, this morning meditation sit, and just giving people guidance, but also a place for silence.
I love that. I also love the shorthand for mindfulness as taking out the, taking out the garbage, the mental garbage. But first we have to identify, let's say like, goes, or put it in the appropriate receptacle, right? Karen's asking this question. It's an interesting question about, there is like a similar midrash about angels standing over every blade of grass, whispering, grow, 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 and wondering if there's a connection to that in some way. It's kind of, that's a nice midrash right there to connect those two.
I think of it with the connection is that we all have personal angels, just like every blade of grass has this personal angel encouraging it and enlivening it. These angels that were with us in our womb, teaching us, haven't left us. They're with us through life. And so when we forget our own wisdom, we can actually pose a question to our angels and they can remind us. And it's also a great feeling of protection and feeling that your life is very unique because everyone was taught different things by their own angels.
So as long as we're talking about angels, what would you say to people who are, who's maybe skeptical or, have trouble relating to the language of angels, or wondering about what is this about angels in Judaism? Of course, there are angels in Jewish tradition, but who have a hard time. How could someone translate that for themselves? Say,
well, the word for angel in Hebrew is malach, which means messenger, and they're really just messages from the divine that are tailored to whatever your need is or question is. They're thought of as like an energetic impulse that has one mission. Like we come with very contradictions in our life and many components and missions, and an angel has like one specific mission, and it's just a clear message. So I wouldn't think of them as like angels with wings, but more just like energetic forces that can guide us. Like there's a camp of angels for love, like a whole bunch of them, because love is such a complicated emotion. But for like your specific need or question of love, like there's one angel for that. And whether you're speaking to angels or speaking to the divine or just like speaking to your body's wisdom, I think it all reveals that same wisdom that comes from this midrash, from our inherent essential self.
Yeah, I really love that. I love that idea also about that as like the angels kind of as an aspect of divine wisdom that is trying to make itself known, if we can pay attention to it and in its particularity for that moment. Here's a really interesting comment by Amy. During the practice today, I was reminded about letting go of getting it right, listening to my body. What worked for me, instead of visualizing a light, which took me to my head and doing it right, I went to feeling the heat. That was amazing. Thank you.
Wow.
How about that?
And as I mentioned at the beginning, the Tevets really correlated with the difficult visceral emotions of the body. And the hush or sense that we specifically are meant to notice and refine and channel is the sense of anger. And if you strip away the narrative of anger, it's just a visceral, hot, embodied sensation. And so it's not inherently negative because it's just a sensation. And so if we can strip away the stories we have with it and just feel the embodiment of it, then we can actually begin to work with it and channel it.
All right, well, here's a question. Good question. How does this midrash square with what I understand is the Jewish teaching that life does not begin until birth and that the child is ensouled when it draws its first breath? It's neshima, it's neshama, neshima. So how do we?
Beautiful question. And the way I've heard it is we have different levels of the soul that kind of come to us or that we enter into at different times. So this possibly could be one level of the soul. And then when we are birthed, we have our first breath, which does sound like the neshima, neshama correlation. I don't know the particular soul and when it comes from this to birth, but it does seem like entering here, it says the child enters the air of the world. And with that, you need another dimension of soul to like live, because this is kind of still a primordial world. We're in the water realm, and now we're birthed onto dry land. So it's like another creation entirely.
Yeah. That's, I think, the right answer to that question, a really good answer to that question. The other thing that struck me was, just as you mentioned, that we're in the water world of the womb. It's really, to me, quite an amazing thing that every single person has had the lived experience, pre-conscious maybe experience of non-separation from having been a fetus in the womb without any consciousness of separateness, right? Of just being. And that is, as you said, you described as primordial. I think it can be analogized maybe to the Garden of Eden, and then actually, then life really begins when when we leave the garden. The garden is this kind of like world to come, basically, right? That we only get a glimpse of. All right, we should wrap up because we're at time. It's lots of good questions here.
And just one thing I wanted to point out is that the feeling that we get when we go in the mikvah, the ritual bath, is coming back to that place of non-separateness and almost like returning to the womb. And in Jewish thought, it's like the mikvah is the divine womb, the womb of God. In a way, we're coming back to that place and feeling the oneness and unity. And then we reemerge onto dry land as a new being entirely. So it's a chance to practice that throughout our life.
That's beautiful. And it's also really appropriate as we're preparing to enter into Shabbat too, where there's going to be a tradition to go to the mikvah and prepare whatever people might do in preparation for Shabbat to like follow that kavanah, that intention. Jen, I'm really glad that it worked out actually to do this, to go into Shabbat and anticipate Tevet and to do this in Hanukkah. So just really such a pleasure to get a chance to practice with you and learn from you and everything you bring to this practice. So thanks for the gift.
Thank you for having me. I'm always so honored to be here.
Well, we're honored to have you. And Joan, thank you so much for sponsoring our practice today. And Jordan, thank you so much for holding our space. Each one of you really, so much gratitude for just being here and creating this community and holding this space on such a consistent basis over such a period of time. So we wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom, a restorative Shabbat, and may that hidden light and that wisdom emerge as we give ourselves the stillness and space over Shabbat. So Chanukah Sameach, everyone, and we'll hope to see you on Monday to practice with Rabbi Ari Lev Fernari.